Okay, welcome to this final installment of this second assignment video. It's on the excretory system. Your objectives are we're going to look at describing the excretory system and where the waste products are removed from the body, and then we're going to look at the urinary system and its job in maintaining levels of nutrients and maintain homeostasis within the body. So, the excretory system's job, as it says in its name, is to remove waste products from the body. Okay, now through the breakdown of macronutrients, carbs, fats and proteins, the body creates waste products. Okay, the examples are underneath that: urea, carbon dioxide and water. Okay, similar to say respiration, there's always a waste product, and these waste products are toxic to the body if they're allowed to accumulate. Okay, so we need to have areas in which the body can get rid of them. Now, a couple of these areas we spoke about before. Okay, so the respiratory system eliminates water vapor and carbon dioxide through exhalation. Okay, we've discussed the respiratory system before, so I don't need to go into it again. The digestive system removes feces and solid indigestible elements through defecation or elimination. Okay, we've talked about before as well. Through thermoregulation and trying to control the body's temperature through homeostasis, we sweat, and through the sweat, through the skin, we excrete water salts and small amounts of urea that is produced when we're breaking down our macronutrients. Okay, so again, we've talked about thermoregulation before and vasoconstriction and vasodilation of blood vessels. So what I wanted to focus on kind of for the rest of this video are the kidneys, okay, and essentially the urinary system. So the kidneys are considered to be our main excretory organ, and they help us to eliminate water, urea and other waste products in the form of urine. The urinary system itself looks like the following. Okay, we know the vena cava and aorta from the cardiovascular system. Okay, aorta being the major artery of the body, and the vena cava being the major vein of the body. We then move into the renal arteries and renal vein. The renal artery supplies the kidneys with blood, so it takes the blood to the kidney, and the renal vein takes the blood away from the kidney and back towards the heart or back towards the rest of the body, depending on where it's going next. The next bit down is ureter, which are the tubes that supply the kind of urine from the kidneys, all the filtered bad stuff from the kidneys down into the bladder, where we're going to store our urine. Okay, and the urethra, finally, the urethra is the tube that expels the urine from the bladder to the outside of the body. So let's have a look at that, or let me talk about that in a little bit more detail. Now, essentially, what we've got to kind of think about are the little jobs of each of these elements in the urinary system. So blood that's sent from the heart is kind of monitored and filtered by the kidneys themselves. And inside each of the kidneys we've got these little filtering units called nephrons. And these nephrons take a liquid portion of the blood and filter out any impurities. Okay, so impurities such as kind of urea, mineral salts and other toxins that are accumulate within the body through all the chemical processes and all the digestion that's happening within the body itself needs to be get rid of. It does this by separating out the blood into kind of two different sections. What's left in the capillaries after the blood has been separated is a small amount of plasma and the red blood cells. Everything else, okay, the rest of the blood plasma is being separated out and is sent through these filtration units. And from that, waste products are removed, urea is removed, okay, any toxins are removed, excess ions are removed, and they are turned into what we call filtrate. Okay, and that filtrate at the end of the kind of filtering processes is basically urine, which passes down the ureter into the bladder. Okay, now the bladder itself is a sac-like hollow organ. All right, and in there we can hold anywhere from 600 to 800 milliliters of urine. Okay, so the bladder itself stores the urine that we're kind of waiting for. Now, when the bladder gets to about 150 to 400 milliliters, the walls of the bladder begin to stretch, and it sends a signal to the brain and spinal cord to basically tell the body that it's ready to urinate, ready to get rid of that excess water and urea and all the waste products. Urination itself is a process of releasing urine from the urinary bladder through the urethra and out of the body. Okay, and it begins with muscles or sphincter muscles, the urethral sphincters, both internal and external, allow urine to pass through them. So when we need to pee, the internal sphincter relaxes and allows a little bit of urine to kind of exit the bladder, which stimulates that kind of sensation that we need to wee, and tells the body that it's ready to go to the toilet. So at the same time the sphincters relax, the walls of the bladder start to contract and squeeze the bladder, and then essentially push out the fluid from the bladder down the urethra and out of the body. Okay, so two things got to happen together to allow us to wee. One, the internal and external sphincters have got to relax, and two, the walls of the bladder must contract to push the urine out. Okay, so that's kind of how we wee, and all what the organs do to kind of filter the blood. What we've got to look at in a little bit more detail is actually the role of the urinary system within the body. So these are the roles. Okay, so the first role we've already discussed, which is filtration. The nephrons filtering the blood and taking away all of the waste products, convert into urine, and when the body is ready, it will expel that through the urethra and out the body. Okay, so in a little bit more detail there, the blood enters what's called a glomerulus. Okay, and it removes the blood plasma and leaves blood cells, and essentially takes out any waste products, water, and excess ions. Okay, so excess ions, we're talking about things that if the body's got too much calcium, potassium running around in the blood, then we need to take it out, and then kind of let the blood go back down to normal levels. Okay, similarly, if we have, not enough of them, then we can signal for the release of those hormones, those ions. We've already discussed the storage and excretion of waste products, so we know that the urinary bladder now fills with urine and it stores it until the body's ready to excrete it. Okay, we know that as the next bit, 150 to 400 mils full, and it signals the brain, tells the brain it needs to wee, and through the internal urethral sphincter relaxing, we actually go to the toilet, as well as the contraction of the bladder muscles. What we haven't discussed yet is the production of hormones and the maintenance of homeostasis. So let's start with the production of hormones then. So calcitriol works with parathyroid hormone, okay, to raise blood calcium levels. It does this by stimulating the small intestine to absorb more calcium, take more calcium up from the food that we've eaten, and it also stimulates osteoclasts to break down the bone matrix, because we store a lot of calcium in bones. Now remember, if you don't remember, go back to the previous video on the roles of calcium. Okay, so important for muscle contraction, okay, important for other chemical processes in the body. So if that's low, we can't do them, so therefore the kidneys, through monitoring the blood, allow us to know whether we've got high or low levels of these ions. The next hormone which is really important is EPO. It's called erythropoietin, and essentially the more EPO we've got, the faster the rate of blood cell production in the bones. The lower levels of EPO, the slower the rate of red blood cell production. Now, depending on the oxygen levels, the kidneys monitor oxygen levels within the blood. Okay, so if we have low blood oxygen levels, the kidneys increase the production of red blood cells by increasing the amount of EPO in our system. If we had high levels of oxygen within the blood, and we don't need that amount, then the kidneys would decrease the amount of EPO being secreted, and essentially decreasing the rate of red blood cell production. The final hormone that you've got to kind of talk about in your assignment is called renin. Okay, now renin increases or decreases blood volume depending on whether or not we are injured or we're dehydrated. So if we get injured and we've got a cut, or we haven't been drinking enough water, we need to increase blood volume and blood pressure to allow the body to be supplied with the correct amount of oxygen, and obviously to get rid of the correct amount of carbon dioxide. Okay, so an increase in renin will increase blood volume and blood pressure, and a decrease in renin will decrease blood volume and decrease blood pressure itself. Okay, again depending on whether we're injured or not. Finally, maintenance of homeostasis. Okay, so there's four little different elements to this. Now ions, we've already kind of touched them a little bit, but all them ions that are listed there, the kidneys control the levels of them. So the kidneys are always monitoring the blood for the levels of these ions. Okay, so if their levels are too high, we can signal the reabsorption of these levels into the blood. We can signal for an increase in absorption of them from the small intestines, and in certain cases we can increase the release of them from their storage places around the body. Okay, for pH, the kidneys regulate the amount of hydrogen ions that we have running around in the blood. Okay, and it also monitors kind of the acidity and alkalinity of the blood by having its own store of bicarbonate ions, which if it needs to, it can put into the blood. So when the blood's becoming too acidic, it can release some bicarbonate ions, which then go into the blood and buffer out the acid. Maintaining the pH levels, okay, that stops enzymes from being denatured and allows the chemical processes that normally occur in that area to maintain without any flaws. Now remember, hydrogen ions are produced in quite a lot of places, okay, so the one we've talked about is cellular respiration, okay, and the production of hydrogen ions. If the kidneys couldn't monitor them and do something about them through bicarbonate ions or kind of moving them into the urine, then the hydrogen ions will bind with pyruvic acid during exercise and cause lots and lots of problems in terms of lactic acid. Okay, so the kidneys have a really important role in one, getting rid of the lactic acid, but two, trying to stop it from being produced in the first place. So the osmolarity of the blood, okay, so the kidneys control the amount of water leaving and entering the blood, as well as the amount of electrolytes. Okay, so one, it monitors the ions that are in the first point, and two, the amount of water. Now, ADH is an important hormone for this. Okay, it's an antidiuretic hormone. I'm sure you've probably heard of diuretic things. Alcohol's a diuretic, caffeine's a diuretic, and they increase the amount of water loss from the body. ADH kind of does the opposite. It tries to maintain the amount of water and make sure that it's always at an optimum level. So the kidneys monitor the amount of water within the blood, and if it needs to make any changes, it will signal ADH to come and do its job. Finally, blood pressure. So the kidneys control the volume of blood in relation to high versus low blood pressure. So it's a bit similar to what Renin did before. If your blood pressure is low, the kidneys increase blood volume, okay, and vice versa. If your blood pressure is high, it decreases blood volume to maintain the amount of oxygen running around the body and to maintain the oxygen demands placed on the body by activity or whatever. So the kidneys can signal for vasoconstriction or vasodilation, and it can also signal for an increase in absorption of water in the stomach and large intestines, or obviously a decrease in the absorption, depending on if you're dehydrated or superhydrated. So that in a nutshell is all the roles of the urinary system, and I expect to see them within your assignment. Okay, so just to kind of review, we've looked at the excretory system, where in the body we remove waste products, the digestive system, respiratory system, sweating, and the urinary system. And we've also looked at the urinary system's jobs, and in particular the roles of the kidneys in maintaining homeostasis in the body. Any questions? Come to me in lesson and we can discuss anything.